talking about the Gen Z generation. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
Feel like they're a little slower sometimes, a little less motivated.
Yeah. Little less of urgency.
I agree, but I was literally thinking about this the other day, and that's why when I was like, I want to talk about this, like, we'll record it. I feel like I'm getting older to the point, I'm gonna be 40 soon, and I
You
feel
look
like
good.
what's thanks, thank you. I'll take that. I feel like I'm at this point where I kind of look at younger people, and sometimes I'm like, man, they're kind of lazier or whatever. But I remember being younger and listening to like people my parents' age say the same thing. And I think a lot of it just kind of comes down to like, I think when you're younger, you kind of just naturally are a little lazier,
Yeah.
because I definitely feel like I'm way harder working and like way more motivated than I was when I was like in my early 20s. Even though I was like pretty hard working and everything, I was doing a lot of stuff, but I just wasn't as like pumped about it as I feel like I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that like, I wouldn't say it's normal to be younger and be like maybe lazy or isn't the word, like motivated.
You're right.
But, broad stroke, like looking at younger people, I feel like that's easy to say. And then I think a lot of it might also have to do with the fact that younger people are around other younger people and you kind of like play to your competition.
True.
And when you see a lot of other people that are your age or whatever, you're like, oh, well, this is what they're doing. And then when you look at the older generation, they're working hard and all this other stuff, you're like, that's not for me, work-life balance, right?
Yeah, exactly. But then when when the time's ticking and you haven't reached the goals that you wanted, and it's, I feel like when you're older, 30, 40, 50, your whole mindset changes on what you want
Yeah,
and the
for
quality
sure.
of life that you want. And so I feel like at that point, it's not just your decision, it's your family's like lifestyle that's your decision, right? So if you don't roll out of bed and get up that hour earlier than the rest of the city or the rest of Austin, you made that decision not only for yourself but for your family, right?
Sure.
That's another day that you're not making that appointment. That's another day that you are not um, getting yourself mentally right to have that conversation with somebody. You're not going to be able to deliver it at 100% because you didn't wake up that hour
Yeah.
early. So I feel like maybe now there's just so much more at stake.
Well, it's one thing I think about when we talk about stuff like this. I've had employees and managed employees, and then even worked at like large companies where you've seen lots of other like competition within your business. And one thing that I have identified actually recently that I didn't notice when I was younger is like the level of apathy from especially the younger generation, but people in general. And what I mean by that is like, if I don't try really, really hard, then I can't really fail that bad because I didn't try that hard,
True.
right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like that fear of going all in on something and then failing is more terrifying than like not doing it at all, because I feel like people convince themselves like, well, the reason that I didn't like crush it was because I didn't really even try.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I
we all
think
make
that's the
excuses about that, right?
and I think that's maybe the mindset of like that Gen Z is let's just give it a shot, but not really fully commit. They're
Right.
so nonchalant about it, which I think maybe
I mean, do you think that maybe is because they're afraid that like they won't look cool or something if they can't pull it off?
maybe they've heard it their whole life, right? Like cuz the I don't know. I'm trying to like picture like what does it look like for the generations before them,
Mm-hmm.
but I would imagine that the boomers, they were a part of the crash, right, in 2008. So
Yeah.
they've lost everything, and it's taken them such a long time to gain it back, the ones that have lost, right?
Right.
And so some of them are still possibly kind of, I mean, maybe even still recovering from 2008 financially. I have an aunt that never qualified for the house that she had purchased in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And right now she's always, every month she's upside down $300, like,
Mm.
and she has to make it work. But that's because she bought a house in 2008 that she didn't qualify for.
Thing's probably worth a lot though.
Huh? It's worth a lot. She's so equity rich. It's not even
Right.
funny. Like, and I told her like, hey, I know that it may look like you're poor, like financially, because the money isn't adding up, but you have a rental property paid off in 6 years.
Right.
Wait, is it 6 years of 2008?
Yeah. I mean, well,
What is that?
no, that'd be 38. If it was was a 30-year mortgage?
Yeah.
Well, then it would be 2038.
So when it's due in 38?
Yeah. Yeah. So she's
Oh, so
yeah.
she applied some principal payments then.
Okay.
So
That's
then, yeah,
possible.
because I think she only has like 6 years left, and she's like really like crunching pennies. But I think that so it's her. That's her mindset, right? The generation after, the one that she raised, because he sees that mom's like, she got a house, she's making it, she's okay. There's no drive.
Right.
There's not very much drive as somebody that never, because she's the first generation that didn't have anything, that's working for something. The second generation lives off the fruition of what she made.
See, but that's kind of my point, right? So here you've got first generation that, starts from nothing and has nothing to lose.
Right.
So if you have nothing to lose, you kind of might feel more confident to really put it all on the table,
Right.
right? Whereas if you kind of have something to lose, and even if that's not financial, like maybe I'm thinking about like younger people where like they have this thing where they think they're cool, they're smart, whatever it is, they don't want to look stupid in front of their friends. That's
And he,
that's vulnerability,
mm-hmm.
right? So if you have this like facade that you're afraid that's going to get tarnished, then you may not put everything up, not because you're comfortable, but because you're scared.
Right.
I think about this with relationships. I got divorced when I was 30, right? So I had to go back out into the dating world when I'm 30 years old, which is kind of weird, right?
It is.
Especially as a guy where like now I can date women like down to 25 and it's not that weird. I'm 30 years old with a 25-year-old girl. Like,
Yeah.
that's not creepy. Like, it's kind of normal. And then I can date women all the way up to like 35, 40 years old. Not that creepy, right? So I've got this wide range. And so I'm dating a lot of women. And the one thing that I identified after like going on a couple dates and being with a couple of women is you run into these, and this is just women for me because I date women, but I think men do the same thing. I just want to make sure I cover my bases. Is that you see people that are like, why can't I find a good girl or why can't I find a good guy? And when you start looking into it, you start to recognize that people go into relationships and they don't really give their entire selves to the other person. And because of that, they don't get out of their kind of relationship what they expect. And it's like, well,
you get what you put in.
Right, exactly. And if you ask like, well, why aren't you, putting more into this relationship? The answer is always, well, I did that in the past and I ended up getting hurt. I fell in love with this woman and everything was great and I was totally into her and she broke my heart.
Why does
Right?
this, like, okay, maybe I'm obsessed with real estate, but like life just always lines up back
No,
to real estate because it's like
I'm
the same.
agreeing with you.
Yes, because I feel like so many people are like they want to give it a shot,
Right.
but they don't want to be open to a zip code outside of what they wanted, what they really, they want a size 4 for a
Exactly.
girlfriend.
Yeah.
But they won't take the size 6 and take her to the gym, and I think size 6 is great. That I think I would love to be a size 6. But what I'm saying
know
is
what
the
you mean.
expectations are
Yeah.
super high.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think that's like anything, and like you said, everybody has a goal in terms of what they want. If you were to flat out ask, like, describe your perfect mate or describe your perfect real estate career or whatever it is, but then when you're like, well, here's what it's going to take in order to obtain that, a lot of times people are like, well, actually, a lot of times you see people say, yeah, well, I don't know if I really want to do all of that. But then what's even crazier is I see a lot of people that are like, no, I'm going to do it a different way. Right. So like, let's just bring it back to relationships and we can obviously, parallel
You
it
can
with real
correlate.
estate.
You can read within
Right.
the
But
lines.
it's like, okay, I want this, this woman, I want her to have a good job. I want her to be like level headed, as some guys would say, like not crazy. Right. And I want her to be a 10. And it's like, okay, well, here's what it's going to take to obtain this woman. Right. And it's like, do you check all these boxes? And instead of being like, man, well, okay, maybe I could work on that and make it happen. That's usually not what people say there. And then if they're like, well, maybe, I'm not willing to do that to get that. That's at least self-awareness, which I don't see a lot of. What I see a lot of is, yeah, that might be your thing in terms of the way you think that I'm going to get this girl. But for me, like, I've literally had a guy tell me when I was having this exact conversation and he's trying to find a girl, he tells me the way that he wants to find a woman is he's going to walk in the room, look her in the eyes, and change the energy in the room. Yeah. I can't wait till that goes on film. You know who you are.
Wow.
And so, like,
Well, because I'm like
what the
thinking,
fuck are you talking about? Right? Like, what are you
that's a
talking about?
reach.
I mean, now let's
Good luck.
relate
She's
it.
gonna run.
Now let's relate it back to real estate. Like, so imagine, and I guarantee you know somebody like this who is like, oh, I'm the best at everything I do. I'm just going to get into real estate. I'm basically going to get into the industry.
Million dollar listings
The
only.
industry's going to feel my vibe, and I'm just going to change the energy in the real estate market. Boom. Like, these people are out there.
Yeah.
They're out there. And so going back to my comment about like apathy, I think you've got a lot of people that, you know, they know what it's going to take.
Mhm.
But in their minds, they're like, the fear, and again, we can go relationship or real estate, the fear of going all in and failing is so painful. And especially in relationships, most people that I know have at least once had their heart broken.
Mhm.
It sucks.
Mhm.
I don't care who you are. I don't care. You know, I've even seen situations where guys and girls have gotten broken up with by people that I think in the you know, the heart of it, they kind of weren't really into that person. And then when that person breaks
It's
up
just
with them, they're
rejection.
like, "Oh man." Like they're just busted up.
Yeah.
And I think that feeling is so terrifying to a lot of people when it comes to real estate that they're like, I don't want to put in 100% and fail.
Mm-hmm.
But then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like, but if you don't put in 100%,
You
you're
won't.
you're almost guaranteed to fail,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, there's my relationship advice to all of you
Free.
that are looking for someone. You know, if you're not going to give 100% of yourself, you can almost guarantee that you're not going to get what you're looking for out of the relationship, unfortunately. And the same thing goes for real estate or anything. You kind of said, you know, forget about real estate, like just waking up in the morning, getting to the gym, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, you know. And I think apathy is the killer, man. It's, you know, like, well, like the what's the saying everyone says, it is what it is. It is what it is.
I hate that.
Like, fuck it, what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
It is what it is. Like, really? Like, there's nothing we can do here? Like, it just is what it is. Like, I don't know. And that right there is the definition of apathy and just kind of being like cool with whatever. And if I don't try, I
But
can't fail.
that comes back to the my vibe is my vibe, right? When they come in, they're like, this is what I want, no exceptions.
Right.
And you're like, this everybody's staring at you like this is not gonna work. Not gonna work.
Isn't it interesting that and this isn't a generational thing in my opinion. This is like a human being thing. Isn't it interesting how we as human beings, and I'm just using this as a broad stroke. I know not everyone is like this, but a lot of people are, where they really feel like there's something special about them. Isn't that really interesting? Like, how many people have you met that like you can tell in the back of their minds like they're like, I'm different. Like I'm different. Like out of all the people in this world, like I'm different. Like I'm special. And I'm old enough to have met so many of those people.
Yeah.
And I'll even admit in certain situations when I was younger, I'd kind of feel like, you know what, maybe I'm a little bit better at this than everybody else, you know? So ridiculous. Where does that come from? That confidence, you know, like, and again, going back to the apathy, right? Where it's like, I don't have to do it that way because I'm different, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, do you really believe that, or are you just utilizing that as like a shield because you know if you go all in and you fail, there's a strong possibility people are going to look at you and be like, maybe you ain't different.
Maybe they're not correlating the right I'm different, right? Because when you go to a listing appointment, that's all it is. It's not about me. It's about how we can help you, but this is how I'm different. I set myself aside from, you know, the competition. So I feel like the I'm different part can kind of kick you in the butt if you use it at the wrong time, right?
Yeah.
If it's an ego thing, that's an issue. If it's this is how I can stand out, this is how I can help you, or, you know, this is to your advantage or everybody's advantage,
Hmm.
I feel like it would be appreciated. But
Well, I like that you brought up the listing appointment because it's on my list of topics for you. Be a nice segue to get away from,
actually,
ego, apathy, and all of that.
well, I was gonna bring it back to the losses, right?
Let's go.
So a lot of people say like, man, I'm just scared that I'm gonna lose it, like that I
Hmm.
won't be able to. When we bought the second property, I thought the same thing. Like I'm exposing myself. Like, we're exposing ourselves. We're stretching the finances a little bit. Not really stretching it. It's just now at this time, like I'm the head of not we are the head of our household. My husband is the head of the household at where we stay,
Hmm.
but also the rental property. And so that kind of stretches us out a little bit on not only our stresses, but can they make it too? Can they pay the rent? Or if they're not, like, we're responsible for that, So
Sure.
it's a stretch going that way. But one thing I had to tell myself was, um, you've come from nothing.
Yeah.
What is the worst thing that can happen? You go back to nothing? I mean, yes, that's my biggest fear, but you know what? I know how to get out of
I
nothing.
was gonna say, but for how long,
Yeah.
right?
I'm
It's a
not
marathon.
Yep, I'm not scared to lose it all because I know how to gain it back.
I like that.
And it's just work.
Hmm. So where does that?
I think that's where you can get your capital. Your highest your you can capitalize on that kind of strength. That's like if you think of like a fighter, when he goes out to go fight, let Canelo or what's the Irish dude?
Oh, like Conor McGregor.
Yeah, like they go in there and they
Right.
have to tell themselves they're different on the way out, like on all the way in. They have to play their theme song. They have to, they have to get themselves in
Or do
the.
you think it's positive do you think it's possible that they just put in so much work
It's
that they
both.
know, they just know, right? It's not like I'm different because I was born different. I'm different because I've
I
done the
worked it.
work.
I
Yeah.
worked to become different. I
Right.
worked hard to become different. So I think it's that, and it's also getting in the mentality of playing your favorite tune. Whatever it is that gets you rolling out of bed.
Hmm.
That's what they have to do when they run their 10 miles a day or whatever, however much they have to do to train up to that fight, knowing that there's a possibility that they can possibly die in front
Yeah,
of thousands of people. That could be their very last fight.
for sure.
But you know what? They're like, I'm just gonna go all in, and as long as I work hard, that will never happen. If I work hard enough and I'm quick enough to avoid that, one hit, I'm
Well, isn't that safe to say though, because you've experienced it before,
right. They've
right?
experienced a huge loss, I'm sure.
Because that's one thing that I have also been thinking about over the last few years with managing people and just kind of having these sales kind of conversations with salespeople is like, in addition to the individuals that we just touched on that I feel like are fearful to go 100% because they're fearful of the loss, I've also seen people who aren't going 100% because I don't think they know how good it feels when you're like crushing it.
When you're hitting a PR at whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like I mean, I've got people I'm thinking of right now where like I feel like they're not giving it 100%. And I'm like, dude, why are you not pushing harder? And they're like, I'm good. I'm good. And when I'm thinking in the back of my mind, like, if you were to hit, like, I like that you use, PR, like your personal record, like when you hit that personal record, like it's a great feeling. And like, yeah. And like, I think a lot of times people don't go for it because they don't think it's possible. Right.
Hmm.
So they're like, well, I'm never going to get there. So I'm just going to do what I can. And it's like, no, I'm for real. You could do this. And when you do it, I think a lot of salespeople would admit to this, that like whatever the metric is, if it's dollars, if it's units, if it's, for in your case, like homes sold, like there was a number when you started that you thought like, there's no way that I will ever be able to sell like X amount of houses or X amount of, volume. And then you hit it and you were like, oh shit, like I just did that. And then next thing you know, a couple months or years go by and like that PR is like something that you're hitting like every
Every day.
quarter. Yeah,
Yeah.
or whatever every
Whatever.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're like at one point you're like, "Oh, I'll never be there."
My first when I first got into real estate, my first 8 months I didn't sell anything.
Mhm.
I even went and I have my PNC license. What is it called? Property and casualty.
Yeah,
I
for
had
insurance.
I had my PNC license. I was working at Allstate, and There was an agent that I had went and did community service with when Hurricane Katrina took place, and we were sweeping, like, cleaning whatever was left of the houses.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember she saw a twinkle. Like, I believe that she saw a twinkle in my eye. That makes me different.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm just kidding. But I just want to mess with you. But she saw something. I know she saw something in me because there was another person that was there with me, and there was not so much engagement on that conversation. It
Mhm.
was more of like focused on me, which I don't think is like good. I feel like that was rude. For one, I think that was really rude that she didn't conversate with her. But I do believe that she's seen something that she was like, okay, how can I capitalize on this kid? Like,
Right.
she's saying she's getting her real estate license, and this was before I got my license.
Sure.
So at that time, I just wanted to go do good for the community. So, anyways, we were sweeping. We were talking about. I was telling her how was looking forward to getting my real estate license. I really wanted to, move to this next chapter. I was daydreaming in front of her, telling her my daydreams.
Yeah.
Right. And so she was just like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting. Whatever." Well, 2 years later, which was at that time, it puts me at 8 months in real estate. I'm not closing anything. I'm just renewing.
What
just
year was that?
2017.
Okay.
Yeah. So 2017, it was like November, December, October, something like that, like the fall, around
Sure.
this time. And I was working, and I just felt like, man, is this why I got in real estate? Was to not, to just pay to renew, not get anything. I can't even tell anybody I can help them or I know what I'm doing because I don't know what I'm doing. I had no
Right.
clue. She reached out, and I feel like pulled me out of it, like pulled me out of my crap, and was like, hey, come join this team, me and my husband, whatever. So I ended up learning how she was digging for business. And at that time, there was like 100 and something agents in the office. And we were doing cold calling. And I was like, man, like they look like they're having so much fun. They're going to lunch, like
Right.
we're still here. And she's like, look, Bianca, like, let me tell you something. Nobody in this office does what we do. I'm showing you what I do, and this is how I become top, and this is how I stay on top. This is my bread and butter. Do you want in? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, you're gonna make 100,000 this year. I cannot wait. And she's like, or no, she goes, how much do you want to make? I was scared even the word to come out. I was like, 100,000. Like,
Right.
I want to make some good money. And she's
Right.
like, what's good money? And I was like, 100,000. And so she's like, you could do it. Like, I'm gonna help you get there. And I was just like, what? Like, I probably would be the first one in my family. Like, I didn't even want to believe that, that somebody would say that you would make 100,000. I was like, yeah, okay, sure. Didn't even believe in it. I hit it.
Yeah.
I hit the first 100, and then after that I doubled it, and then I just kept growing from there. So like right now I'm still have a PR that I tell myself that I want to hit. Of course, I won't probably put it out there to tell everybody what my goals are because like
I get it.
yeah. But I do tell myself that every day. I'm like, okay, this is your goal. But it's not even just your goal. This is how many families are tied to that goal. Like these are the faces of your goal. So in perspective, because you help this many families, this is this is my accomplishment, is the families. The money comes with it. The money just so happens just to come with it. And that's just because as long as I'm putting them first, I get paid.
Yeah, no.
A spiff.
Listen, profit is not a dirty word.
Yeah.
Okay. Like we all work for a living and we deserve to get paid. I mean, that's what we get, we exchange our time for
Insurance companies don't even like hold off on they like that's
Right.
a word they use.
Yeah.
We need them to be profitable.
It's not a dirty word. But no, I love that. And so when you're talking about that first 100,000, for example, when you went out there, you had this number, everything along those lines, kind of going back to what we started with.
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like you were fearful that if you didn't hit 100,000 that you were going to be a failure? Or
no, I think because no matter what, like I can just go back to my regular life, right? Like
right.
going back to making nothing. And
Yeah.
so that's the thing. I was like, I don't want to not make nothing. But if I end up in between of the 100,000 and nothing, I'm happy. So
you know what I think it is, and I'm literally just doing this on the fly right now, thinking about your mentality versus a lot of other people that I sit in here with, and I almost wonder, and I don't know the answer, but I wonder if the people who are fearful of giving 100% with the possibility of not winning, see, for you, it wasn't as scary because in your mind, it's like, well, I can just go back to where I began. But do you think that maybe a lot of people they bullshit themselves and they tell themselves that they're like, and they've probably told other people,
Mhm.
I'm the best, here's where I'm at, like drive a car they can barely afford maybe, and they've put up this kind of facade in terms of like who they are
Mhm.
and the possibility of getting knocked back for, I relate it like financially to cars, right? So
Okay.
like I get to see people's credit scores all the time.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I see people with auto loans with like crazy monthly payments. And sometimes I'll ask, like, hey, this payment here, I noticed this, like, what's going on? And it ultimately always comes down to, well, I got this car and then I went and turned it in and I got the other car and there was
Up,
negative
up,
equity and all this
up,
stuff.
up,
Right.
upgrading.
And even with cars, people cannot go from, I'll just say, you can't, no, people won't go from like driving a brand new Tahoe and then for a couple of years realizing like, you know what, I'm not really into this payment, and then downsizing and
Oh my
getting something
gosh.
less expensive, because that right there,
Everybody sees it.
yep. And it's like a visual like failure. I don't feel that
I
way.
feel like if you could do it, if you're their strategy behind it,
Sure.
it's for one, it's nobody's business. Two, if their strategy behind it, props to you.
Right. No, I totally agree. But I think that that's an analogy of why people are so apathetic and don't want to give 100% because they're fearful. It's kind of like the car analogy, right? When I
Wow.
started when I started my mortgage company branch, I left the company that I was at, and I knew that I was either going to have to, put in a ton of time to like swing doors and hustle, get with agents and do all of that, or I could make like an initial investment and doing kind of things like this and spending money and whatnot. And, which is faster, obviously taking money and investing it into your business. So I owned a really nice home. I mean, I had done a custom kitchen in my house, like all this crazy stuff. I had a beautiful home, and I sold my house, got the equity out of my property, and moved into a 1 bedroom like flat that was probably the size of my office with my large Doberman pincher. So like no room,
Both of
right?
y'all are like,
Right. And I did all of that, and people were kind of looking at me like, what the heck is going on? And I'm like, well, here's what I'm doing. And to your point, like there was a plan behind it, but I was able to and I'm not trying to say I've got some superpower or I'm different, but like it didn't bother me because I think I was a lot like you. I grew up, pretty poor,
yeah.
right? So in my mind, like going back to being poor, although not like what I want to do, it's not scary to me. And selling my home and watching everybody be like, "What the heck is going on?" and like selling furniture, and you're moving into a 1 bedroom apartment like on the other side of town, like what the heck? I think that is absolutely terrifying for people because they can't get past the fact that their friends, family, or whoever is looking at them and being like,
Are you struggling?
"Right,
Yeah.
right." And again, going back to the car analogy, I just gave you one about my business, and I think I've identified it. Those people out there that don't want to give 100%. I really think that's the reason, whether it's in a relationship or in a job or at the gym, whatever it is, they don't, they have this fear of this insecurity of
Hmm.
other people looking at them and saying, well, you're not doing as good as you did before. And us in real estate, a lot of it, we can't even control.
Right.
I mean, are you having as good of a year this year as you did last year?
Honestly,
Yeah.
no,
Me neither.
no.
Right? Like
But
welcome to the roller coaster, right? But
but I know that there's something that me and you do have in common is we do have a funnel for
yeah,
next year.
for
So
sure.
there's a strategy for the loss. There's such there, to me, I'm so excited for next year. That doesn't mean I'm checking out for this year.
Right.
That
No,
means
I hear
I'm
you.
I'm just prepping next year. Like everything that I have for this year, either it's gonna plan out or we just push it to next year. And I'm
Mhm.
okay. I like I said, 0 to 100.
Well,
As
and
long
in
as
all
I'm
things considered, I'm sure I know I'm doing very well,
Mhm.
all things considered, in this particular business. But in comparison to my own like PR, am I doing as well as I did last year? Well,
we're
no.
not hitting a PR this year, but
No,
it's okay.
but yeah, I mean, again, it's just it's interesting that
This
you and
is
I can be real about that and be vulnerable and have a conversation about that. And the vast majority of people I run into are unwilling to admit when they're not doing as well as they did before. And then let's face it, like we can kind of blame it a little bit on the industry,
Mm-hmm.
but we're really the ones that are like controlling the dial,
Mm-hmm.
right?
We are.
And I think it's important that we admit to that as well, because what others do is they're like, well, I got fired from my job. I mean, you're talking to a guy who listens to every excuse on the planet when people want money,
Right.
right? So it's, oh, I lost my job. Oh, I got divorced. Another one is like, those are the two main ones, right? And like my whole thing is, you lost your job or you got divorced, like that's life.
Mm-hmm.
Like that stuff is
Did
constantly
you keep
happening.
rowing? Yeah.
The only time that my heart ever like kind of like
A
pours out,
loss.
well, is yeah, if there's like a death, or I've definitely run into instances where people are like, yeah, I was in a horrible car accident. Like, if your health is on the line, like
Yeah.
that's tough. I mean, and again, I can be like, well, shit happens, and it does, but like health is a tough one because you really don't have a lot of control over that.
Mm-hmm.
But man, if I had if I had a dollar for every time I hear that a divorce, ruin someone's finances, or a job loss ruin someone's finances, and it's like, duh,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
that
It does that.
that's what
That'll do it.
That's what it does. It's like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, welcome to life,
Yeah.
and you
It's
gotta
how
come
we
back from
adjust
that.
to it.
Yeah.
It's same with this market. Like, one thing I'm really proud of, and it's not of myself, but it's the people that I'm in community with that we check in every day. Agents from all over the U.S.
I like that.
There's probably like I don't know, maybe like 12 people that I'm super close in vicinity with,
Mm-hmm.
whether in my Austin market or outside of the market. Hey, how are you doing? Hey, did you get up today? How was it? How many did you get under contract? What can I do to help you? Hey, this is a strategy that's working for me right now. Are you implementing this? I would highly recommend you do this. Or, I hope your mom's doing okay. I
Yeah.
have some friends right now. I feel like we're running a marathon. Some people are gonna get winded and they're gonna take a break.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. It's okay to get winded and take a break, but do not check out.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do this marathon, keep moving. Still keep moving. Do not stop, because it's so much harder for you to build. What is that word?
Momentum.
Momentum. Yeah,
Yeah.
when on a stop. I've done it on social media plenty of times. It is super hard. I keep thinking of like the Stone Age days where remember that commercial where it becomes a wheel
Yeah.
and it's like really like rough around the edges, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
like so. Anyways, that's what I think for myself, and one thing I'm really proud of for the people that I'm in community with is we get up and we show up every day. Even if we want to cry, even if we end the day in our pillows crying, like we still show up,
Yeah.
because these are the years of these are going to be defining years.
For
I feel.
sure. For sure.
This is like, again, I told you this last time. Like, so many people are like, "Oh my gosh, 2008, 2017. I made it through 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Now for this mark or 2021, when you were only like you had to list to last.
Yeah.
And then now 2023, I'm like, I'm good. I've gone through 3 mini crashes or whatever, right? Corrections. But one thing I will say is that I just take these as badges of honor, and honestly too, I just kind of try to control the noise a little bit, right? With education, because most of the time when they share things on the news or whatever, it's always to the extreme. Have you ever like talked to your grandma or your family member and you want to tell them like, yeah, like, I just found out I have planner's foot. If I told my grandma I had planner's foot, she's like, "Nah, you got planner's foot." She calls my mom, "Can you believe it? Bianca has planner's foot." And I'm like, "Mom, it's just a knot in my foot. Like I can stretch it out. It
Right.
just goes to such an extreme."
Always.
But I feel like that's kind of the news,
Yeah,
and so really like it's about how you tell. So now when I tell my grandma, yeah, I got planner's foot, but it's okay. I can massage it. I can rub it out. Like I just
Mm-hmm.
got to extend it. Just explaining to her, really,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, I went on a rant, but
No, you're good. I mean, I love this stuff. I really do. I mean, obviously, you and I initially had a lot of real estate conversations, but I think a lot of what people are going through in this business right now is a lot of, people need kind of these types of talks to really focus on their mindset. Like your group that you have, I don't think enough people have groups like that. Like I'm familiar of another group at Realty Austin. They call it like a ninja group where they all get
Ninja
together.
sales.
Yeah, and they kind of get together and they do their thing. I've put together a couple different groups. I call them firm meetings.
Mhm.
It's an acronym. So we always have a financial advisor, an insurance agent, a real estate agent, and
It's
a
a
more
BNI. It sounds like
well, it's just the four of us, but yeah, very similar. Where we don't have like
you got to use
the
me.
life coach.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's more of just like a support group, if you will. And of course, we're trying to refer business, but really just to check in on each other because we're all salespeople in the financial arena, and there's ups and downs, right?
And I think the thing is too is like we have to get even outside of our market. Like I have friends that are in the car sales business. I have
Mhm.
a friend right now that I was talking to. It's about not even like we kind of like don't even have to be this tight about the community. The community gets bigger than the real estate industry. So I have like friends in like I said, car sales. There's a guy that I don't know what he sells. I have no clue what he sells, but it's parts. He does parts and labor. I have no clue what it's for.
Yeah.
But I was calling him, and one thing we learned is the economy affects me just as much as it affects him. We
Yeah.
our my down market was his down market, and I'm like, wow. You know what's cool is that I'm pretty sure that he doesn't have that many coworkers that he can relate to or that he can call and say like, how are you doing? I hope you're doing, whatever. One thing I've learned is like us making those calls to our past clients or our current clients. Actually, a past client is there's no such thing. They're clients for life.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
when you call a friend, I think it's really important that a lot of them, I feel like a lot of my friends worry about me and they're like, are you okay? How's the market going? I know that the rates are high. Like, how is that looking? But one thing that I've learned is like, I don't want the conversation to be only about me and,
Sure.
oh, boohoo, Bianca didn't make 10,000 this month, or whatever. How are you doing? Like how's, I know that car sales is pretty close to, home sales or, his parts business is the same as ours. People when it's a down market, people don't spend.
Right.
If we ever get close to a recession, pockets start getting tighter,
Every time.
So I just feel like it's really important for us to create those communities, whether they're real estate agents in the market with you or your friends and family. A lot of your friends are probably getting laid off right now and you don't even know because for one, they won't post it on Facebook.
Right. Nobody posts the losses, right?
No, they won't post it on Facebook. For two, they retreat and hide out and wait until they get the answer. But if you're that friend that calls them, just so happens to call them that Tuesday morning that they got laid off and you put words of encouragement or life into them, they're going to always remember that.
Yeah.
And they're going to appreciate that.
I agree. Well, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do here, where we're just having this conversation.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I really appreciate the fact that you are doing this for not only real estate agents, not for the industry, but for others to know the real side of who we are, aside from the contract, aside from your goals as a friend. Like,
well, yeah, I think it's important because I definitely think that there is, and you could say this about business in general, but I think it's really, really in the forefront when it comes to like real estate and lending. People think we make a lot of money for doing very little. And I think that there's also a potential stigma that, people feel like we are trying to figure out ways to get one over on them, right? So whether you're at a listing appointment or selling a home, I mean, how many times have you had instances where buyers are like, what's this going to cost me? How much does it cost to use you, right? And so being vulnerable and talking about the business, talking about what we do, and then just kind of opening up a little bit and being human and saying, look, like, I'm a real person. And one of the things I love about what I do because the majority of my business is purchase in the local market. Trust me, I could get on Zillow and they'll sell me 1 million leads to anywhere in the country. And
quickest, fastest. The thing about that is like, this is the sad thing about Zillow is like people want instant answers and they don't know that click causes a
money.
frenzy.
Well, and it causes a frenzy too, yeah.
So like multiple people will jump for that click. Their family member can be going through cancer or whatever, and all of a sudden, or talking to you saying that they're on stage 4, and you're like, oh, I gotta go. It's a lead, whatever.
Yeah.
You hang up, and because you didn't answer quick enough, someone else was right there and answered quick enough. So it's like, it's kind of sad, like how, like for one, that we have to put our life aside for strangers that don't even care. They
Right.
do not care if you can't make it because it's a Sabbath day and you want to spend a Sunday with your family to go show homes.
Well, and that's kind of my point in all of this is, I personally
sucks.
enjoy working, in more of a local space, right? And a lot of times what's really interesting to me is that it's like I almost feel like sometimes with buyers, I have to flat out tell them like, "Hey, I'm here in Austin. Like, what area are you looking to purchase in?" They're like, "Oh, I'm looking to purchase in like 78745." I'm like, "That's where I live." And people are like, "Oh, wow." And it like changes the dynamic
Hmm.
because I think that and here's the good news. I think we're getting away from this a little bit, but I think over the last like I'd say almost 10 years, we've really been in more of like a not like a phone sales environment where we're even to the point now where everybody's getting sales calls on their cell phone. I mean, remember when
Oh
that
my
was like
gosh, I
never a
hear it.
thing,
Yeah.
right? So like you're getting all these sales calls, and I think that the knee jerk reaction, and to like the point of Zillow where your phone is ringing and all of these things, if you're a buyer, I think the knee jerk reaction is like, I'm dealing with someone that I'm never going to physically see, and therefore I can make this extremely transactional and kind of keep them at arm's length. And like, hey, if they're going to do the deal for no money, or if they're going to work their ass off for free, like, why is it my problem? Right. But then when you recognize, like, oh, wow, I'm dealing with like an actual human being, like, would I want to be treated like that? Like, this
Her
person's
son
not
plays
over in
soccer with my
India.
son,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what this is all about. I mean, every client I talk to, I encourage them, like, hey, do some research, go online because I'm going to save you a ton of time from me telling you how awesome I am. Because that's all we really do,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
like, why would I say anything different? I'm never gonna get on there and be like, well, I'm kind of good at what I do, but there's people out there that are better. Like, no, like, do the research. And yeah, I this is designed to create that kind of human aspect. And I appreciate you coming back on because everyone I've had in here, everyone's like, I love it, and we're producing some great content. And then I'm like, hey, you got to get back in here. And I don't know if it's because they're just so busy or they're scared or whatever, but I originally invited you because how good your social media is, and I love that you're doing the reps.
Thanks. Thanks.
So
I appreciate that.
yeah. Well, I have real estate questions for you that I've written down that I would love to ask you, some of which we kind of touched on just a little bit. But
We always do that.
right, you made mention because I wanted to get into the listing thing. One of the things that you had made mention of was talking to people who were selling and talking about how you do things maybe a little bit differently than some of the other agents. And I think one of the big questions that I've been getting from some of the, like, I call them water cooler talks, or people who like I am just kind of having a drink with or something like that. What do you feel is the best way for a seller to get top dollar when they're selling? Because let's face it, that's what everybody wants. But in addition to that, we've got situations where people think their house might be worth more than it is, or maybe, what are your thoughts on that? How do I get the most amount of money out of my house if I'm looking to sell?
So I think earlier we had touched on it by you you get what you put in,
Right.
right? So if the walls need touch up paint,
Mm-hmm.
things like that, what you want to do is basically someone's about to pay a 7% interest rate on a house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Possibly lower if they buy down the interest rate, whatever, right? There's
Right.
so many different ways that we could fix it. But let's just say 7% interest rate on your property. What can you do to alleviate the stress of them paying 7% interest rate, them having to redo the kitchen that you never upgraded, that you've lived there for 20
Right.
years? You have the cabinets hanging by a thread. Um, your landscaping, it looks like it's gonna be a lot like you've just been throwing sod over sod. Like
Right.
those small little details alleviate the stress of not only do they have to pack up their whole household and bring it to the home, but you already have it prepped and set to where they feel like they're getting a brand new home and they're getting peace of mind that they got. I would say honestly too is just I tell my clients this all the time is
Well,
like,
let me back you up on that because one thing I want to make sure you do touch on, because I've had agents
oh,
that say, make sure though that any home improvements or anything along those lines that you think need to be done, that you have an agent come into the home and
oh,
look at
for
those
sure.
first. Because what I want to avoid, and I see this more often than I'd like to admit, is you have homeowners that want to get top dollar and they know that they need to make improvements. And so what they do is without any sort of experience or any sort of, license or expertise, they just start fixing everything.
I had some clients that I had put on the market last year, I think, or something. I don't remember. I think it was last year. I put them on the market. They were so excited. They wanted to move. They went to go back to their home country, and I told them, I was like, okay, well, this is what needs to get done. This was rookie move. When I conversated with her, I felt like she was a doer. Like she was like one of those people that's like, I got it, I got it. You know, when someone says it with confidence, you truly
Right.
believe them. And so I'm thinking maybe they're like me. They have uncles, and everybody's got little mini talents that can put in.
Sure.
Oh my God, it was lipstick on a pig. It was horrible. I freaked out. Like I really wanted to pull my hair out when I walked through the property, and I was like, "What? Why did you use like what is it? Water-based paint on cabinets?
Right.
I don't understand. Like there was clots like everywhere, and I was just like, man, this is horrible. Not only did you make a mess, now we got to redo it. So you got to pay twice for what you just did. Yeah, and I don't know that it was a mess.
Well, because here's the other part. So we've covered that. All right, getting top dollar, we know that there might be repairs that need
Don't
to
do
be
it
made.
yourself.
Number one, we know there might be repairs, but have an agent come in and tell you what repairs need to be made because
Right.
you don't want to be investing money into something that you're not going to get back. Probably not good to do it yourself unless it's something that you do for a living.
Mhm.
And then here's the other part that I've seen, and I think this is going to really hit home for some sellers out there. I know a bunch of sellers that I was dealing with that were thinking about buying a home in late, say, 2021, early 2022, when interest rates were like, 3-4%. And they're like, I'm calling, I'm doing my follow-ups like, hey, Bianca, how's everything going? Are you still thinking about selling and buying a new home? And you're like, yeah, Matt, we're still getting some of those things that we feel like we need to get done on the house. But as soon as we get it completed, we're going to list. And I'm like, well, how much time do you think you need? And they're like, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Oh, we'll probably be done in like 4 to 6 months, which is like exactly what they told me 4 to 6 months ago.
Mhm.
Well, you flash forward 4 to 6 months from the end of 2021, early 2022, completely different market. And I would like your opinion on this. I would venture to say that there are probably sellers, even right now, when you come in and say, what do you feel your house is worth? And they give you this number that's like late 2021. And you're like, where did you come up with that? Why didn't you sell then? I guarantee deep down the answer is, well, we had some repairs that we thought that we needed to do. And so we wanted to get those done so we could get top dollar. But time, you just took too long.
Mhm.
So it's like, yes, we know getting top dollar for a home is going to be making sure that the house is up to date and all the things. How do you alleviate that stress or financial pain of a 7% interest rate? But in addition to just fixing stuff, know from a professional
What's the highest ROI
what's the
items?
hardest ROI. Don't just take it upon yourself to just start fixing everything.
Yeah.
And then make sure it's being done professionally, unless you literally are a professional at this. If this is like your weekend warrior thing, like
Right.
that might not be best practices, because if it takes you 6 months to a year, it could be a completely different market.
Mhm.
All of the investment that you made in those repairs, you could literally lose every single dollar if it takes you too long to make the repair.
Right.
Because we're going to give you a number in this market, not. Do you know what
It
houses?
doesn't apply. It won't
Yeah, do you know what
apply.
houses are going to sell for in 9 months?
I have no clue. So
Right.
what I tell them is like, this is where you're at now. We will
Mhm.
check in every 30 days, every 90 days, just to check in, so you can have your hands on the pulse of what your house is valued at. And at that time, at any point of time, you feel like it's time to pull the trigger, at your comfort, we'll do it.
Mhm.
It's what you're comfortable with. But I do not want to be responsible for telling you, like, hey, this is the timeline. This is when you need to put it on the market. Because what I say, I can make us both look really stupid by just trying to guess the market.
Sure.
I don't want to put my name,
You don't have a
my
crystal ball?
reputation is too, yeah. I'm not playing with my reputation.
Right.
I will not put myself on the line to tell you, But I will tell you, as of right now with this market, this is what sells, right? I just can't tell you, there's some people that since COVID, I would like to say that pools were a high demand.
Mhm.
Well, now that COVID's done, pools aren't as appreciated.
Pools are expensive, man.
Yeah,
Not only to install, but to maintain.
right.
You know,
Super. And now they got to deal with those,
I got a buddy of mine that runs a pool company, and I've been trying to get him on here, but he's just so busy. But I want him on here just so that he can explain like some of the stuff that goes into maintaining a pool, because I know a few people that try to do it on their own, but it's tough. And then paying a company is expensive. But, it's like one of those things I always think about, when people get these like expensive sports cars, but then they complain that the tires are like $250 a piece and everything like that. It's
That's
like,
a
if you
lifestyle.
can't, exactly. It's a lifestyle. So anything else that, we kind of talked about repairs and how to do it? Anything else that you feel is important for getting top dollar?
For top dollar on a listing.
Mm-hmm. What about the way it's priced?
Oh, of course. We just put a tear down on the market. She wanted 330. Last year.
Okay.
We missed that mark. We didn't put it on the market. We didn't move quick enough. However, we just did an adjustment. What did we put it? Oh my God. I don't know what we put on the market for, but I do know that we did an adjustment.
It wasn't 330.
No, it wasn't 330. However, we did get at least 10 offers.
Okay.
Since we just did the adjustment Friday, we did the adjustment. We got 10 offers, 8 of them cash, like 3 are gold.
And do you think that it was the adjustment itself that maybe prompted people to make the offers, or do you think it was finally priced correctly?
It was priced strategically. Correct.
Okay.
Did I want to list it at that price point? No, I didn't. I think it hurts their thought process on what they thought they were going to get on the home.
Mm-hmm.
But all along, this was the value that it was. Not that. So I think last year, when they put on the market for 330, it really should have been 300. We were arguing. We're not arguing, but we had a discussion or dispute over 30,000, which makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't want to put something on the market and it expire and somebody come right behind me and put it back on the market when I knew I could have taken care of it. And all they'll do is repeat what I said.
Sure.
Just in a different tone, different tonality. And then at that time, they can tell them like, hey, because you did this way, it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Let's try my way, which was the way that Bianca wanted it to get done. She just never executed or had the relationship, or she wasn't driving it home all the way to tell you how important that pricing is. So thankfully, we have an alignment now that we did the adjustment. We got what we wanted. We figured cash is safe. So we took the cash offer, and we're going to close in 30 days. She's going to get, oh my gosh, this is the best part too. So teaching people about perspective on areas of town that they really want, right? A lot of people from Austin, they do not want to lose that zip code or that county
so
on
weird.
their
I'm
address.
Not from here, and I see that.
They don't want to let go of the
Right.
county. They do not want to live outside of the county. So the thought process of them living in Travis County, out of Travis County into Hayes, Williamson, or Bastrop, oh my gosh, it's almost like it's a lifestyle change for them mentally, financially. They think
emotionally.
Yeah, it's everything. Yeah, so there's so much to it. So we were gonna go under contract in Sunfield. Oh my God, they didn't give us a chance. They didn't even like the idea that we were not under contract yet. But I know in this market, builders want to sell.
Yeah.
Agents want to sell. Everybody wants to sell. So if you're willing to work, one thing I've learned that's really, really important in this market is relationships, communication. If you can't communicate correctly, if you can't get your point across to the other person on the other side of the table, forget it. Y'all are just going to be chasing each other's tails. Like
Right.
Nothing's going to happen. So one thing I did was with the Sunfield, they didn't want to write the contract. They it happened to be the sales rep was out of town. She went on vacation, and I ended up getting with her partner. She didn't. I don't know if she liked the idea that we were. I know I'm probably going too far. I
Go on.
I don't think she liked the idea that her partner was going to sell something. So I honestly, truly, in my gut, believe that she was blocking us from a contract.
Okay.
And
Well,
I know
people do that. That happens.
Yeah, and I know that Sunfield is a high demand area. I know that it could have been sold, but however, this listing has been on the market for more than 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
Just give the person the shot. Like, just give us the shot. Worst case scenario, hits back the market.
Right.
So I was really frustrated on that. So I told my client, hey, we need to go look at other options. I'm telling you right now, this is not going to work. It doesn't look good. They're not willing to work with us. We don't have time for this. Like, because we have a cash offer. We have a couple cash offers. Last time we let the cash offers go, we let it sit, they were gone. They took on another opportunity.
Right.
So let's not sit on this opportunity. Let's soak it in. Let's go look and see what other options within the zip code. If you want to look in within, the Buda area or whatever, we'll continue to figure that out. Tell me your deal breakers and what exactly that you want. So she told me exactly what she wanted. I walked through a plan. I was like, here, FaceTimed her. I was like, this is what I found. This is perfect for you. She didn't take it up. She never went to go visit the community, which is fine. She went randomly this Monday because I told her, I was like, Monday we're gonna go look at houses. She beat me to it. She went earlier in the morning to go look, and she's like, Bianca, I'm so happy that you told me about this community. This is everything I wanted. The
Nice.
pitches of the roof look gorgeous. Like I love the house. It feels better than Sunfield. I love this house. I don't want to lose it. Like I don't even care about Sunfield anymore. And I was like, thank you. Finally, like you were able to look outside of like not Travis County, but outside of Buda, and then now you found something in Kyle that's so much better, and you're happy with it. I've
Right.
never seen her so excited to see something that she really loved. Long story short, what got us the deal was the communication. I talked to the sales rep. I told him, "Hey, this is the obstacles we face. This is how we're getting through it. We got a cash offer. We can close quicker than 30 days if you want. Let me know what you want so we can make it happen." Also, she may not get qualified with your lender. So if you are open to this contract, um, if you're open to this contract, if you can allow me an outside lender, if
Yeah.
it doesn't work out, we're working. Anyways, they ended up staying with the inside lender.
Yep.
It ended up working out. But the thing was communication. We had two parties that were willing to help her, and that's how we got there. So I'm like super ecstatic for her that she found the community she wanted, the house she wanted, the price that she wanted on the sale of her house. And all it took was for me to communicate with her where we're at in the market, where she's going to possibly end with her net, and also the community that she wants. I had to, communicate with her that that's probably not going to happen, but this is the plan B. This is what we can do, and it ended up working out to be the plan A. And so I just feel like right now in this market, it's really, really important and critical that we deliver good news, bad news, all efficiently with communication and making sure that the person that you're working with you, not against you.
I like that. I mean, that is one thing that most people don't talk about when you're, speaking to somebody who's thinking about selling, what's going to get you top dollar. It's really, having that communication with the other parties and doing all of the things because,
Making friends, not enemies, is huge.
right, right. So in addition to, we've talked about repairs, we've talked about communication and everything along those lines, pricing correctly can also help you get top dollar. One of the things I really wanted to touch on that I'm hearing way more than I would like to admit is if I'm a seller, why not just try to figure out a way or find a real estate agent that's going to reduce his or her commission? I'm seeing a lot of these 1% commissions and everything along those lines. And as a lender, I experience a very similar thing. And my first question, and then I'll kind of kick it to you. My first question to anybody who says, well, I'm just going to go ahead and find, I've heard of real estate agents that are going to list for 1%. I think as buyers, unsuspecting buyers, and you'll have the answer to this better than I do. Do you think that buyers want to use a real estate agent for 1% because they think that that agent is going to do everything that a normal agent's going to do for 1%? Or do you think the buyers are like, my house is so awesome that I don't necessarily need to pay a full commission because it's going to sell
I'm special.
itself? I'm special. Because my answer to something like that would be, listen, if you think that there's a real estate agent out there that is going to do everything a top agent's going to do for a traditional commission at 1%, I'd say you're wrong. And then if you think that your house is so great or you don't need all of the services that come along with the top agent, why are you not just selling for sale by owner?
Right.
Like, what are we doing here?
I-
So what do you think most sellers that are like, will you do it for 1%? What's going through their mind?
So they want to, of course, at the end of the day, they're thinking about the net.
Sure.
What is that going to make me more money? So will it make me more money? Will it save me money? Can I do, will it be quicker? Will it be faster, more expensive? Whatever, right?
But do you think that they're thinking that because they're going to, let's just say I want to hire you and then I've got another agent that's telling me that he or she is going to do it for 1%. Do you think as a seller, the whole 1% thing, do you think that they think that both of you are going to provide the same exact service, but one of you is going to do it for 1% and one of you is not? Do you think that's possible? They believe that there's just someone that's willing to work for less but do the same amount? Or do you think they realize that at 1%, they're getting a completely different service, which could, to your point, yield them way less money because it's not going to be marketed correctly. You're not going to have the communication with other lenders. I mean, all of the things that you just made mention of. What are your thoughts from a traditional seller?
So this is I can't tell you the thoughts because there's always a difference in it's scenario based,
Sure.
right? So it might be they're a retired family, retired household, and they're living on a tight budget. It could be that. It could be the sale might not even be profitable for them, to be quite honest. If that's the case, if you're that tight on money,
Sure.
you shouldn't be selling.
Right.
You should not be selling because I'm telling you right now. Well, let's take this back a couple steps. What's your favorite cereal?
My favorite cereal?
Yeah.
I haven't had cereal in years, but when I was a kid, my favorite cereal was Honeycombs.
Honeycombs. So,
yeah.
So when you go,
Do they even make that anymore?
I think so. Yeah, they do. So with Honeycombs, when you go shopping for your groceries and you saw two options, would you go for Honeycombs, which you know what it's going to taste like? You know exactly. You already know how much it costs. You know exactly. Would you pay or would you pay that the market value for the Kellogg's, or would you go for the off-brand, possibly waste $2.50 or whatever, and then let it go old and throw it in the trash,
Right.
and then go twice back to HEB or grocery store?
Well, I know what I would do, but this is so I
Quick
want
question,
I
because-
want
but I have
want to
another
get
answer
I
to
want to
this.
get what I know I'm going for,
Exactly.
right?
You get what you know you're going for.
And so that's why I love this conversation, because I think you and I both know the answer, but this is for the people that are out there where
Well, I got another one
Get
to that
me.
for that. So we're gonna go for what we know we're going for, right?
mm-hmm.
So what makes you think that if you're gonna choose an agent that's gonna give you 2% of their commission back to you,
Mm-hmm.
and the most important thing that your relationship is with that agent is they're gonna represent you and negotiate on your behalf.
Right. Well, and
Do you-
hopefully get me top dollar for my house.
Do you really think if they can't hold the conversation, a tough conversation with you on their value, do you think they can hold the value of your house
That's a good
when
point.
negotiating?
That's a good point.
I don't think so.
Right.
They're not. So that's I think that's a great opportunity to maybe that's a good tactic to interview your agent. Will you do it for 1%?
Mm-hmm.
Let's work on their strategy. How do they communicate with you? Do they lock eyes with you and they're able to tell you straight up no in the eye? Or do they tell you, well, my broker charges me this and this is how much? No. Like I cannot do I can't do less than 3%. Let me share with you why. This is where the 3% goes. I have to market your house. Not only do I have to market your house, I have ad spend that goes. I have a whole team that works behind me that's going to get your house sold. We can guarantee you we can get your house sold. But if you cut my commission, for one, I don't think I'll be able to take that for my own reputation, because then once I do that, I have to do it for everybody. So now my work is strenuous. I got to stretch myself further for 3 times more families, because now, that's So I got to stretch myself 3 times more, because you're offering me 1%. On top of that, I have to get rid of my staff. I have to get rid of my marketing. So now you're giving me, there's a loose leg on the table. It's going to fall.
Yep.
And once they find out where that loose leg is, everybody's going to start,
Well,
going
and I
at it,
think
so.
that, and this is kind of why I wanted to bring this topic up, is more of an educational piece. Like I said, I think you and I know the answer, but I think your average consumer, when selling their home, is under the impression initially that someone's just willing to do it for less because y'all make so much money that someone can afford to do it for less, and that they are going to provide the exact same service that any other real estate agent would offer. And I'm here to dispel that, whether it's with real estate or with anything, in terms of, yes, you get what you pay for, kind of going back to your Kellogg's versus,
Off-brand.
off-brand. Like, I can tell you from experience, you're definitely going to notice a difference. If saving money is your main objective, sure, okay, maybe then, we can debate that. But if you're expecting a specific product and you think someone's going to produce that exact same product for less, I'd say you're probably mistaken. And so
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to these agents that are, they're being interviewed, and like one of the first things out of some of these sellers' mouths is, "Hey, I was giving you a phone call. I'm thinking about selling my home. I was referred to you by, my sister, whatever. Um, I just wanted to let you know I've already talked to an agent that says that they're willing to sell my house for 1%. Would you be willing to entertain something like that?" And what's interesting to me about that is, I would say, if you found someone to do it for 1%, what made you decide to call me?
Mm-hmm.
You obviously see value in something that I offer that this other person at 1% didn't offer you.
And one thing
Otherwise, you wouldn't have called.
no, but you know what I would say is too is that I honestly can't blame them for asking.
Right on.
Because when I go buy a vehicle from a car salesman, I know that they're in sales. I know they know how to negotiate. So I'm just gonna kick the tire as much as I can just to see, even though I may not get a discount.
Right.
It doesn't hurt to ask, right?
Sure.
But also, I think for me is I
Got to be careful with that, though.
uh
Got to be careful with that, though.
why?
Well, as a buyer's agent, you would say that to your buyer, wouldn't you? You don't want one of your buyers coming in with a property that's listed at $500,000, comparable sales, completely, support that, and then they come in and go, "Why don't we go in at 425?" And you're like, "Yo,
Okay, that's different.
not different. It's not different.
No.
That's kicking the tires. That's like
Yeah.
seeing what you can get, right?"
Okay, we could take
Gotta be
one.
careful.
We could take one loss, and that's an educational loss,
Yeah.
right? But after that, we can't. We don't have time for it. I give people grace when they want to do something like that. I'm
Yeah.
very understanding because I'm like, okay, some people like to be told how to do things. Some people like to be shown how to do things.
Sure.
So with my clients that are very adamant on like, let's just for kicks and giggles, let's just try it, and I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna tell you right now, that's not gonna work. It's not gonna
Yeah.
fly. I know that there's. How about let's just go look at the property, and if it just so happens to be someone showing at the house, just know that there's gonna be multiple offers. Don't test the waters on something that if you really really like it, don't play with it.
Right.
Don't play with the chances of you not getting it. So we can try it one time, but if that doesn't work, my plan's gonna work. Like
Yeah.
we're gonna go my strategy.
Yep.
And so I usually do it that with my listing with my clients. Like a lot of the men or women, they're very like high D. Their house is decorated black and white. They're very analytical. They just a driver personality.
I just to reel it back, I just think it's a good topic to bring up, just because I have been talking to a lot of agents, and I even know some of these agents that are doing these 1% listings and everything like that.
Sorry, yeah.
And so going back to that, my fear for your business is if that becomes, I'll give you a short analogy. In 2008, I was in the business. Obviously, we all know what happened with the market, and because homes were underwater, Obama put in some stuff in place with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, where we were doing HARP loans. It stood for the Home Affordable Refinance Program.
Right.
And you could refinance your home as long as we could show that there was a benefit in the refinance. And about 99% of the refinances involved no appraisal. Right? We did not have to have an appraisal completed on the property. If we could reduce your interest rate and we could reduce your payment, then we were good.
Mm-hmm.
And we probably did this for almost 2 years, just refinancing people. No appraisal, no appraisal, no appraisal. Eventually, the government came in and said, okay, we're done with this HARP program. And we had to start doing appraisals again. And when we went back to doing appraisals again, borrowers were like, what are you talking about? An appraisal? I'm not paying for an appraisal. And it became the norm.
Since when? They were like,
right.
Yeah.
And we had to get back to that. So here in this marketplace, when I hear things like real estate agents that are complaining about sellers saying, hey, will you sell my home for 1%? And I know agents that are working with some of these online companies that are forcing them like, hey, take this listing. They're just using their license. Right. I think like Redfin is, one of these ones. We'll just call them out. And so my fear is like the market changes. Maybe this market is a market where 1% is acceptable. I don't know. But what I do know is that going back to what would be considered to be more normal commissions is going to be very, very difficult for the industry, because the consumer is going to be like, what are you talking about? Who charges more than 1% on a listing? And to your point with your reputation and everything along those lines, I'm thinking of the reputation of the entire real estate industry.
Hmm. So there's going to be, I think there is going to be a trend where some people are, you might be your first year in business and you need the business, you need that deal to
Mm-hmm.
renew your license. That is a possibility. However, I feel like it's going to just be a cycling phase. It's going to be
That it's
another,
not sustainable, that, these people that are going to close at 1% are going to not make any money and they're not going to be able to afford. And then,
yeah.
yeah. No, I mean, I agree. And like I said, a lot of these things I've already thought about and kind of know some of the answers, but we're, trying to get the information out to the people
Yeah.
out there, because it's something that I'm hearing a lot more of that, is a little nerve wracking.
It might mess around with our, commission structure a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I don't think that it's going to take a huge effect, just because we know that what has to come out of, like, that's not just a 3% commission, like, that's going to taxes, that's going to marketing. Like, my website alone is $1,400 a month. Like,
Yeah, I mean, marketing for the listing, the photos, everything along those lines. And so,
it
public
takes me
service
about
announcement to
2,500.
anybody who wants to sell their home and is looking for a reduced commission. I would just almost
I'm
say,
not the one.
well, not only that, but I would just say, like, hey, if you don't see any value in what a real estate agent is going to bring them, why hire a real estate agent at all? Because a 1% agent, you are going to have a bad time. You might as well not spend any money and run it as a for sale by owner, or hire a legitimate agent that's going to charge you a real commission that's going to go into marketing your property and doing all the things. Like, don't split the difference. You're
Right.
just wasting money.
And I think for me too, it's like I'd rather focus on 2 families, 3 families at once,
Mm-hmm.
versus if I get a 1%, I now have to stretch myself to, like I said, 6 to 9.
Yeah.
I can't do that. This is not Ohio. Like, this,
Yeah.
that's Ohio's prices. They're like, their average price point is like, I think it's like 200,000.
I believe right now it's at
when-
like 225, 235. Remember, I'm from Ohio.
Oh, I forgot.
Yeah.
Well, I have a lot of friends from Ohio, and I know, like, I have agents that, they make like 6-9 million or whatever, and they close
Yeah.
like 60 units. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know how they have the bandwidth to do something like
It's
that.
less competitive. It
It's
is
just
definitely less
crazy, though.
competitive than it is here. That's part of it. And there, I mean, actually don't know, but I would envision there's less agents,
There
and that's the
is.
reason for the less competition.
I get that,
Um,
but what I'm saying is if, like, back to the 1%, is
Right.
I would have to be that agent here in Austin. Like, yeah, this is like dealing with like 500.
Oh, you're not going to go
$1 million.
1% in Ohio. I mean, that's for sure.
Yeah. Okay,
Like,
then that's
yeah,
great. That's
yeah.
awesome.
I mean, that's
But what I'm saying is
Yeah.
like, in reference to that, they can do. They are. Their market is structured to be able to take on 10 at a time or whatever, right? However many deals at a
it
time.
can be.
I
Yeah.
think I can. I know I can do it, but I don't know if I'll. I don't know if I have the support to afford.
Yeah.
1%
Well, yeah, that's
at
part
a
of it.
time. It's
Gotta-
I truly don't think I
Right.
can afford it.
I
Like,
agree.
it would put me out of business.
So going back to our initial question, getting top dollar is making sure that you got everything up to date, but making sure that you connect with the real estate agent to let you know what needs to be done.
Right.
Don't do the work yourself unless you literally are a professional at it. We covered, you're not going to save any money by finding an agent that's going to do it for a reduced commission. In fact, that's probably going to be wasting money.
Mm-hmm.
You might as well just try to sell the damn thing yourself, or find an agent who's legit and is going to charge you a full commission. And then outside of that, communication, right? You want an agent that's going to be able to negotiate a good deal, who has a reputation in the marketplace, who might even know the real estate agent on the other side of the transaction.
Right.
I cover it?
Yep. You
I love
covered
it. I got
Summary.
one last thing I want to cover, and then we'll I got actually so many things I want to
I
talk
have
to you about.
One for you.
Go, let's do it. I've got 2 for you,
Okay, fine.
but
This one's, I've been like waiting for 2 weeks to
let's
tell you
go.
this one.
Let's go.
Assumable mortgages.
Yes. Okay.
So,
I haven't done this one on film yet.
no?
No. I
Perfect.
get asked a lot.
So, assumable mortgages. I was overhearing another agent when I was at
Mhm.
Summit, or was it? It was Summit in Dallas. One of my roommates, she was talking to her lender. She asked the perfect question. What questions should I be asking about assumable mortgages that are a risk? And I just so happened to be texting my husband, just checking in for the day.
Mhm.
And when I heard, I was like, what? She put him on speaker, and was basically, from my gathering, is that even though the title's transferred over, the loan is still responsible on the original owner.
No, no. I mean,
No?
that's the whole
Is
purpose
there
of
a
assuming the loan. So,
But is there a legality to, is there a loophole that kind of puts both parties on the line?
no, I mean, if title's, I mean, sure, of course, if title's not done correctly, but you're going to have title done
Or is
correctly.
there
And
not
then
title done typically on assumable?
there is. There
Okay,
is.
so
So,
teach me a little bit about of assumable more, because I've
yeah, so here, when you have an assumable loan, you really only have two types of loans that are assumable, and that's going to be FHA and VA.
right.
Now, I have heard instances where people have found conventional loans that are assumable, and they're typically through credit unions and things like that. But truth is like there's no incentive for a lender to transfer, and especially in an interest rate market where rates are much higher than the assumable loans that people want to take on. I don't know. I hear from these, like, they're usually like investor bros and guys that, like, have been doing this for a few years but somehow know way more than me. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah,
They claim it, but I've never seen it.
yeah.
So to keep things simple, it's typically FHA and VA loans. VA loans can't be assumed by anyone other than a veteran. FHA loans can be assumed by anyone. The big downside to it, well, let me talk about the benefit of it. And this is something I've been having these conversations with real estate agents about, because one of the number one questions that you should be asking every single listing is, do you have an FHA or a VA loan? So when you're doing a listing presentation, you absolutely want to ask that, because if they have an FHA or a VA loan, that loan is assumable. And in my opinion, it is something that is marketable.
Mhm.
So if you're trying to market the listing, like, why not put that in the property description saying, hey, this home has an assumable loan? So talking about all the benefits is that, yes, you could assume a loan with a very low interest rate. Even if the loan, for example, which FHA is going to have PMI, who cares?
Yeah.
If you're assuming a loan at 2.5% with mortgage insurance, like, your fully effective interest rate is still in the threes.
Right.
Like, no brainer.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the benefit of it. The downside, and what we run into a lot, is the amount of money that the seller currently owes on the mortgage and what they want to sell it for. That difference is required to be brought in cash,
Right.
which for most buyers is not an option. So in other words,
But that's what I always wondered was, like, how does one with an FHA assume $100,000 difference?
right.
That's like
it's kind of like one of
a
those things, like,
stretch.
it exists, but you have to, I mean,
That's
it's
a
like
unicorn.
all the stars have to align. Don't get me wrong. I have seen instances where individuals are selling their home.
Mhm.
They're getting a reasonable amount of equity. And here you have somebody who maybe bought their home like 3 years ago. They bought it for $400,000. It's worth $700,000 today. They have a 2.5% interest rate. And this individual is buying it, putting the $300,000 difference down and assuming the 2.5% interest rate, right? Now, there's all the stars aligned. But here's the even bigger problem. And this is something that I've been hearing on almost every single one that is going down. The servicer, the person that the mortgage payment is made to, is the one that is responsible for doing the assumable loan. There is zero incentive for them to do this. And because of that, they can't. I've been
2
told
months.
that it takes at least 60 to 90 days
Yeah.
for these servicers to do this. And some of them just keep kicking the can down the road, and they make excuses, and they say, oh, we're this, we're busy, we're that. So when you're doing an assumable loan, here you have a seller who wants to sell their home, and they're marketing it like, hey, we got a super low interest rate. And let's keep it real. Like, if you're marketing your assumable loan, it's because you are trying to get the buyer to pay more money for your house than what they would normally buy if they're going to take on a 7% interest rate.
Yeah.
So as the seller, you're utilizing it as a bargaining chip to say, hey, you're going to get this great
Cheaper
deal,
monthly, but
but you're going to give me
higher
more
net.
cash, right?
Yeah.
And here you have a buyer who's like, yay, I'm going to have this really low mortgage payment, but I'm going to end up paying more for the property in the long run, but hopefully the appreciation equals it out. Well, when both of those people, buyer and seller, are 60, 90 days in, and they're like,
When
okay,
is this going to happen?
when is this really going to happen? You kind of start to go like, what are we doing?
Yeah, for one, his house, you're watching his house days on market extend.
Yep.
So he's paying for it that way, in that market.
Because you know he has a mortgage.
Right.
Right? Because
And
you're
then-
trying to assume it.
And then the person that's trying to assume the mortgage, you're killing yourself an opportunity that's
On maybe another house, right, where you could get under contract, or I mean, you obviously are renting somewhere, so you're paying rent, you've got a lease, you're trying to figure
you're
everything
tying up
out. I mean,
yourself too.
assumable loans to me, I understand the marketability.
Right.
I mean, I've seen title companies that have like done presentations on these, and I've seen situations where everybody sells them like they're, this new amazing thing. They've always existed.
But
They're just not as practical as it sounds. So like it's the situation of like the omission of facts isn't a lie. So if I just get on a TikTok right now and say, assumable mortgage real estate agents, like this is going to change your business. And let me explain to you why. Someone can get an FHA loan and assume that 2.5%, and you can sell that house for more because of it. Boom.
mm-hmm,
End of clip. I didn't say anything that's not true,
mm-hmm.
but I didn't tell you all of the shit
quick
that goes
disclosure.
along with it. Right. So that is the answer to assumable loans.
But maybe I'm like, help me. I'm hoping I misunderstood. But so what they were saying is like the due on clause. So does it stay? That's what I'm like. Does it stay in the seller's name?
No. So,
So
I
it
mean,
does
you're
get
assuming the
transferred.
mortgage. It gets completely transferred. It's transfer of title, everything. It's really just the
I'm like,
servicer.
I'm gonna ask as many
Yeah.
dumb questions because I feel
So-
like they're gonna come
So
from
in
a
my
consumer
my
too.
opinion, the
So-
reason why assumable loans exist in general
Right.
is really as an escape clause for government loans to get out of potential foreclosure.
Right.
Right? Like it's not for the it is
No.
not for the consumer. Like they did not come up with assumable loans so that they could like, help people out. Like they came up with it because they want to avoid foreclosure. So in rising interest rate markets, for example, you might have an individual that wants to get out of a property and, for whatever reason can't. Maybe they're underwater. I mean, assumable loans in like underwater scenarios for a lender, I would envision that if you could find somebody with a 2% interest rate that is currently underwater on their mortgage and assume that property, you would be in a position to that close in like 2 weeks because
Yeah.
the lender's like chomping at the bit
Yeah.
for that.
Mhm.
Right. So like that makes sense. And if you really feel like, hey, properties are really going to take off in the next few years, and I really want, I really want to get into real estate at a low interest rate, like that might actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that might be a good fit for you. But you're taking on the risk that you're currently purchasing a home knowingly that it's underwater,
Yeah.
right? And you're about to buy a house more than it's worth in the current market and assume that loan because that's a benefit to the lender,
Right.
right? Because here you might have another buyer who's maybe they're behind on their mortgage payments,
Right.
right? Like they're not even making payments. So that may be of benefit, but again, no one's getting any deals in that aspect except for maybe the current servicer. So yeah, but title transfers, the loan transfers, all of it, it's there's no risk to a buyer outside of any risk that is a potential risk where if title companies don't do what they're supposed to do or things aren't filed correctly, but that can happen on any
That's
transaction.
crazy then. So I'm like,
No.
wow.
No, there's nothing to worry about. But good luck finding the stars aligning on an assumable loan that makes
Right.
sense. That's
Right.
what I would say.
I mean, I think a VA is more reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, because VA, obviously
That's
they're putting
amazing.
no money down,
Yeah.
but
Well, I mean, who's to say it's not a VA buyer from Virginia to Texas, or
Right.
whatever from outstate, or
it's just,
they just
we
move their
typically
money
don't
around.
see people, right? We just typically don't see people that have that kind of money that are putting that money down and,
like on a sale.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like,
that's the only way
who's got
through.
300 grand? I mean, don't get me wrong. I know who, but like not most of your buyers are not finding homes and making that work. So,
Yeah,
um,
that makes sense.
yeah. The question that I had for you, I have two of them. Maybe the second one we'll have to push for the next time, and I'll do it as a little cliffhanger. But the topic I wanted to talk about that I haven't done on film that I've gotten a lot of questions on that seems to be something that buyers have a tough time wrapping their head around is when they're selling a home or when they're buying a home, the lease back, right? So I always tell people when we're negotiating on a property outside of like paying more for the home than the next guy in a multiple offer situation, what I find is that sellers sometimes it's not so much the money, it's the time. Right. And so you kind of say, okay, well, we'll allow you, Mr. Seller, to stay in the home for X amount of days or X amount of weeks, whatever it is. And sometimes we charge them a rent, right? However, I've seen instances where instead of charging the current owner money to stay in their house, we just do a $0 lease back.
We just did it.
Right. And there's value in that. Right. So now, because I can't tell you how many times I see situations where it's like, okay, we're going to do a lease back. Current owner is going to stay in the house 30 days to take time to move out. And then when the buyer's agent comes back and says, okay, well, we're putting a value of $2,500 on that month that you're going to be there, it just like it creates so many issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, if we think there's a $2,500 value in the rental that's going to come into this, why not just do a $0 lease back and take it off of what you're going to offer in terms of your offer on the property?
Right, right.
And I see more deals get done that way.
It's like a swap.
But I see this huge misconception with doing a $0 lease back. I don't know why it creates issues, and this is what I want you to touch on. And then number two, the fear I see sometimes with potential buyers that they're like, wait a minute, so I'm going to buy the home and own it, and then the people who currently own it are going to continue to live in it while I own it? I don't like that.
Yeah.
Do you run into that?
Like,
what's the fear in that? Like, these people own the home. They own it now.
It's yours.
You think that they're just going to, like, trash it?
I think it's, so this is my thing, is like, it depends on who the agent is, because the agents really have a lot of influence on how the transition happens, right?
Okay.
Because what I would say is really important is doing a walkthrough even during the lease back. Like before, I mean, on the close, still do that is very important. Still do your walkthrough. Now, once you do your lease back, I mean, that's kind of bad because we didn't even do a deposit on ours. So on the buy side, the agent should have asked for a deposit.
That makes sense. So ask for a deposit. Don't charge them rent, but ask for a deposit just in case something's like messed up.
A little messed up. Yeah, or you didn't clean it to our expectations. And that's like, that's a reach too, because some people, you're clean and my clean's different. Right. Yeah. So, but what I will say is the cash deal that we got, we didn't get it. We didn't do a deposit. We didn't do. Maybe they took that into account, right, in the offer.
Well, that's kind of my point.
I mean, that's the thing is, there's a lot of things that come into account on this large number, this large lump sum that they're saying they're going to purchase the house in, and that's where you kind of have to strategize. You have to just know on your side, how am I covering my bases? Am I okay with giving them this lease back if I get it a tad bit, lower than market value, because I'm giving them time and and a reasonable amount of money that they want for it. But on the other side, as the seller, wait, there's really no disadvantage as a seller on a lease back.
No,
you win.
definitely
you're
not.
Okay, let's not talk about that. So the buy side, I think you just it's really
what the sellers don't want to do is they don't want to pay.
Oh, don't want to pay rent.
Or even they feel like it's too much, right?
So
because I run into that too.
That was the conversation we just had, and I told them like, hey, think of it this way, because this is cash, this doesn't really apply. But on a typical conversation, they're paying market value for your interest rate, your house, right? You bought this house for let's just say $60,000. Now you're selling it for $750,000. So they're paying this much more now for what the value is, plus today's interest rate at a 7%.
Right.
So now that they're paying that's two hurdles that they have to face. One is the equity that you've gained. Two, the market values, interest rates. Three, there's a liability of you staying in the property or not even leaving the property. There's a legality to it that they put themselves on the line with you. I think you should take that in consideration
and that's why you should come in with the lower offer.
Right.
Accept this lower offer.
Yeah, that's why you should, because this is how much they're extending their hand, and you're right here.
So really, it just comes down to communication,
right,
and negotiating that.
Because right now they're doing 90-10. Like they're doing the 90, you're doing the 10.
Because the leaseback is something to me, and of course it's easy for me to say this being in the business, but the leaseback for me is something that like I see a lot of confusion from buyers and sellers, and instead of them, and I think this is human nature, instead of someone saying I don't get it, they're like, no, I don't even want to mess with this because
It's too much.
Yeah, I don't
And I
get
think
it.
it's just the thought process that it's
Yeah.
just too much to take on mentally. But I think if you
Everyone's trying to simultaneous close, and we got a moving
too
truck,
many
and
moving parts.
everybody's, oh, I ordered a moving truck. Like, we told you not to do that, but they do it
There's so many
anyway.
contingencies, and that's where I feel like, as like I said, remember when I told you on in the conversation last video was, this is what happens next. And every
Mhm.
conversation you tell them, this is what happens next.
Yeah.
Even when you tell them congratulations, this is what happens next. After closing, this is what happens next. It's really important to tell them that what happens next part. But really, and I feel like that comes with time. Like with me being in real estate for 6 years, there's still things that I take notes on, and I bullet point them when I go to my listing appointments. I bullet point them when I'm on my buyer's consults
Hmm.
that are really, really important really important points that I need
Yeah.
to point out to them. Like, hey, this is really important. I'm saying this for a reason. Keep the utilities on. I'm saying this for a reason. Like, hey, make sure you don't order, or you don't clean the house twice. Like, you don't get a cleaner to come in twice.
Right.
Once. Just do it deep clean once. Declutter now before we put it on the market. I feel like I'm talking so loud. I'm getting really.
You're getting passionate.
Sorry. Yeah.
I love it. It's
I gotta
good.
calm down. But yeah, so I'm just saying, like, just I think one thing I like to do is put myself, if there's an issue that I have, like
Mhm.
on a let's just say there's something that goes wrong with one of my deals that I have under contract now, I'll put in my note tab on my phone, and I'm
Okay.
like, okay. And all I do is add that to the bullet point of conversations, because I don't ever want that issue to come up again, and I want to be in front of it.
Yeah.
And even if it's a wild one, like it's a one-off, like I still want to bring it up.
Well, I've always said this about this business, is that it takes you about a year or two to learn 80% of it, and there's 20% that you're just never ever
Gonna-
going to learn. It's just
no.
constantly changing. There's always a crazy scenario. That's like my biggest pet peeve, is the agent that always says, I've been in this business for 20 years and I've never seen this. It's like, well, what do you like? I say that at least
The
once or
market
twice a
change-
year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like there's people
there's
in
always something.
there's people that made it in 20 years ago, but now have no clue that there's agents that have been in real estate for 2-3 years, or not even just 1 year. There's a guy that's out of Dallas. He's closed like 1.6 million in GCI.
Mm-hmm.
He's an Instagrammer.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, wow, he does video tours. That's how he makes his money.
There it is.
And someone that was in business 20 years ago is like, I don't get in front of the camera. And you're like, what?
Mhm.
This dude's making 1.6 because you're not getting in front of the camera.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's just a lot. But
Well, can you believe that we're approaching 2 hours?
what?
Isn't this fun?
Yeah. Wow.
So my cliffhanger is
Okay.
because obviously I follow you on social media, and I noticed that you went to Tom Ferry.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to chat with you, and we'll do this next time. I really wanted to chat with you with some of your key takeaways about, some of the things you learned, some of the, maybe topics that they touched on, maybe some of the things that were really just aha moments for you.
Mhm.
Because not only do I selfishly want to know, but I know there's a lot of people out there, and I think that creates a lot of good content in terms of ways that we can all be better at what we
Right.
do, right? Because I've been to some of those trainings. I've never been to Tom Ferry, but I've done a couple of real estate trainings where it's all very translatable
Right.
to any business. And so not only, obviously, this, but we have more than just real estate agents on here. We've got builders, insurance agents, financial advisors. We actually today have what is it called? A staffing agency. But we're all salespeople, right? We're like self-employed salespeople. And I love hearing about some of the trainings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Tom Ferry being one of them, because it's not just real estate. All you got to do is switch out real estate and insert whatever your business is.
Exactly.
And it's translatable.
So one of the takeaways that I got from Tom Ferry, I think for me, was that Tom Ferry's never said this. Never, never, ever, ever, ever. He's always like a go, 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 go. Well, at Summit, he mentioned to like, I don't think he said slow down, but he said just stop and just give yourself grace, which I feel like a lot of us were always like reaching for the stars, reaching and reaching. Like I compare myself to people that have been in business 10 years, 20 years, whatever. And yes, 6 years. Like it's not that close to 10, but I see their production. I'm like, why am I not doing it at that scale? Like, what am I doing wrong at that scale? I don't consistently compare myself. I consistently critique myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm hard on myself. And when Tom said to like stop and give yourself grace, I was just like, wow. It takes a lot for him because he's the one of those people
Right.
that doesn't pay attention to what anybody else is doing. He just keeps going. And so for him to say that, I feel like his mentality has changed in the last year, big time. He's always been about people, about others, like doing for others. But I feel like here after, because this was his 20-year anniversary.
Okay.
This year he called his wife to the stage, and he was basically saying he couldn't have done it without her. And when he said that, I immediately felt like I need to give my husband like some credit for the days that I'm not home, or the days that I'm late, the days that I can't cook, the days that the
Mm-hmm.
house isn't clean. He's right there behind me to do these parts. So I feel like that was one thing that I had to do, was just to stop and appreciate everybody that's in my circumference. But also, for one, is just to, like I said, for me was to keep showing up. Like I don't even care if, you know, everybody else is falling off the market right now. If there's other agents that are peeling out, the ones that you don't see posting, those are the ones that are peeling out of the market. Um, and I feel like that sucks for them. It really sucks. I would love to be a good friend to those. But also, I don't need to get distracted. I
Right.
need to keep going forward, and because there's families on the other end that are waiting for us. That for one, that might be facing a foreclosure. There's not very many. There's not at all.
No.
But there is some that have equity on hand that they don't even know that that's an option.
Yeah.
That they can tap into.
Well, we talked about that the
Oh
last
yeah.
time you were on here, but to your point about Tom Ferry and as far as giving grace, I mean, it's something that I've said for years, as a 20-year veteran. Did somebody just?
Alexa.
Oh, that was Alexa. It's like, wait a minute, what the heck was that? As a 20-year veteran, the one thing, and I want to commend Tom Ferry for doing this, is that when I first got into this industry, when times were busy, my bosses were like, this is when you push the hardest. This is when you make your money. And then when times would get slow and a little tougher, they'd be like, this is when you really dig deep. This is when you
It's
push
like
hard.
go, just go.
And I'm
go.
like, okay, I'm all about working hard, but like there has to be, what is the best time
to breathe.
to breathe, right? And I will say, and I've been saying this for years, is that when times are busy in sales and especially in real estate, that's when you call your friends, you call your family, and you say, hey, and you cancel your dinner plans, and you really do push as hard as you can during good times, because that really is when you make your money. And when times are slow, it's not a time to go on a vacation per se, but it's like put in your average hours that you would normally do. Give yourself grace, don't give up, don't cash out, but like it's not crazy to work a 40-hour work week when, times are a little slow, and give yourself that grace, because you should have been busting your ass when it was really, really busy.
Yep.
And if you weren't, and you were focused on your work-life balance when things were, like shooting fish in a barrel, I think you can probably look inward right now and say, you know what, maybe I made a mistake. Because
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you, I made that mistake my first round, and I've capitalized on, this is my fourth economic downturn, and I've capitalized on every single one since. But yeah, in times like this is when I focus on laying the groundwork, doing the social media, maintaining those relationships, doing the follow-ups, being top of mind, figuring out what do we need to keep, what can we cut back, but what I'm not doing is making myself crazy working like a 60, 70-hour work week, trying to figure out how I'm going to close more deals in a market that we all know is going to come back when it comes back. But like right now is not what it was 2 years ago.
And one thing I'll say is like I was upset with myself. Like even after Tom said that, I came back home and I was like, go hard, still going hard. But
Well, you got to go hard in that like
yeah,
40-hour timeline.
yeah, it's still like you still give your 40, you still give your all, you still put your reps in, because we're still trying to build, right? So for me was I was showing and showing and showing and showing and listing appointment, and nothing was coming about. I had the potential to probably get like 8 under contract this past weekend, and I didn't, and I was upset. Not upset that they didn't make a decision, but I was just like upset with like, did I not, communicate correctly? Did I not tell them what's going to happen in the
Sound like
spring
me.
market? Did I? Yeah, like
Make
what?
yourself crazy wondering what you could have done
Yeah,
differently.
I'm like texting some out of state clients that came in, and I'm like, what did you think about this restaurant? What did you think about I feel like a crazy ex girlfriend, and I was like, you know what? Step back. Nothing
Mm-hmm.
happened, but the good thing is you still have the relationships.
Yep.
You don't have to push nobody into a house. They know what the house is when they want it. They know which one they want, and they know what's on the line. The thing is we just keep showing up. We keep being a resource. So out of the 8, um, I feel like there's a possibility of at least 4 in the next month, which I'm okay with. That's cool. The thing is like I don't want to feel. One thing I've always made sure to myself, and I told myself this, and I pray about it all the time, is like when I help clients, I never want my finances to be ahead of their finances.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want uh, I don't want to be in a financial crunch where I'm like, I need it, I need it, I need
Yeah.
it. Like I don't want to. I want you guys to be first. And man, I want to be that friend to where they're like, man, you know what, Bianca, that was a really good deal, and I hate that I didn't make the move on it, even though you said it made sense. Like you're right, that was a good deal. I
Yeah.
think I'm gonna trust you next time around. You bring something like this up. When next time we come across an opportunity, please make sure to tell me that this is that opportunity that we missed out on. And I'm like, cool. And I respect it. And you know what's cool is like I feel like when you have that open communication where they don't feel like I know me and you are opposite on this part where you're like you're in sales,
Right.
but when they don't feel like I'm a sales and I take off the sales and I'm more of a friend, that's when I can really and they're like, man, you know what? I'll be honest, like I really like this house. The only thing is we're planning in the next 6 to 8 months of my mom. Like I'm worried about her. Her health is downturning. I don't think those stairs are gonna work for us.
Right.
I'm like, you should have told me that a long time ago.
Well, yeah, that's the
The-
communication, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you don't got
it's
to.
a communication, but I feel like that's where sometimes some people they still think we're still like they cannot correlate the fact that you're in sales and you can also be a friend.
Yeah. No.
And so that's the
I
hard
agree
part
with
is
that.
like trying to run those two together.
It's a dance.
It's a dance, and I feel like for the most part, I take the friend lead more than the sales, because the sales part is like I love the numbers, so I can sell that to you all day, the numbers.
Right.
But the other side is the friend, and
Sure.
that's one thing I feel like I'm really good at is watching the social cues. I could see you like looking at the house, trying to see if the plan works. When you spend a little bit more time on that house and you start like scratching your head or you start asking about the financing part, that's how I know that that's the house for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I just watch those social cues. But if I see that there's something that's pulling you back where you're like, I don't know, is there one more?
Right.
Because they feel like they want to find that plan B option. And I'm like,
Sure.
okay, well, what is about this one that you want to go look at the plan B for?
Mm-hmm.
There's something that's missing out of this one. What can you tell me? So I know, for one, I want to make sure I'm guiding you right. And then 2, I want to make sure that I know, like I need to know so I can adjust these things. So, yeah, I think that's the one thing I struggle with is like, um, being like less harder on myself because I feel like I'm not communicating.
Given that grace.
Or some people are just internal thinkers. They don't want to share it. And that's one thing I got to respect is
Yeah.
the bubble.
Yeah.
And I will pop it sometimes if I can. But if I don't, like, it's fine. Like sometimes silence is best too. you
Yeah.
know?
No, I love it.
And
I love
you'll
it.
be surprised. Those are the ones that will call you and like, you know what? I thought about it. I think I want to go under contract. I'm like,
Yeah. And you can't
hallelujah,
even-
let's go.
How'd that happen? No, I get it.
So,
Well, we're gonna wrap it up.
cool.
I always ask at the end, is there anything you want to plug? Plug yourself, plug anything we need to know?
No.
Mechanical bull rides.
Oh man, that thing's awesome. I'm making like a ton of builder friends off of it. So
I dig it.
that's pretty
Listen,
awesome.
we were talking about doing an event here in about a month
Yeah.
where I want to get we're going to do barbecue and kind of do like a open house for this entire complex just to meet
Cool.
all the other businesses, and I might need to rent
Yeah.
the mechanical bull.
Cool.
Right on.
Yeah. The operator comes with it. So
Nice.
that's me. I'm just kidding.
Right on. Well,
But-
thank you for coming on. We'll get all this out, and yeah, if there's anything else you want to plug, you let me know.
No, I think that's good. I think from the most part, everybody knows me. So,
Yeah.
well,
Well, we're gonna keep
Stick it
those.
through.
We're gonna keep them coming.
yeah.
All right. Thank
All right.
you. No, that was good.